The Court of Appeal orders a coroner's inquest into the 2012 Lama ferry crash. High air pollution level in Hong Kong as Super Typhoon Doksuri moves closer to the region after lashing the northern Philippines. And U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visits Tonga in the South Pacific. Hello and welcome to TVB News. The Court of Appeal has ordered a coroner's inquest into the 2012 Lama ferry crash. 39 people died in the disaster and families of some of the victims have been fighting for a death inquest for years. Sharon Tang reports.
The legal battle has continued for 11 years. Pushing for answers since the tragedy happened, the appellants, families of some of the victims, considered today's court decision a pat on the shoulder. On the night of October 1st, 2012, a group of Hong Kong Electric employees and their families boarded the Lama 4th, a company vessel, to watch the National Day fireworks. The vessel sank within 2 minutes after colliding with another boat, the Sea Smooth of the Hong Kong and Kowloon ferry, claiming 39 lives, including young children. In 2020, the coroner concluded that all victims were unlawfully killed and that no inquest should be held. 3 family members of the victims then appealed against the decision but failed. 2 appellants then took the case to the Court of Appeal and a decision was handed down today. The court noted initially, High Court Judge Russell Coleman didn't think an inquest was in the public interest. There is also evidence showing the combing height contributed to the sinking of the Lama 4th. The judges of the Court of Appeal questioned why the issue had not been raised by the Marine Department. The court also doubted if Choi Lee Shipyards, which built the Lama 4th, knew that a watertight door should have been fitted to the bulkhead of the vessel. It noted that needs to be resolved so that the victims' families and the public would know what exactly happened, and that's far more than pinpointing who should ultimately be held responsible. An additional metal plating was found at the bow of the Sea Smooth. The court thinks an investigation is needed to find out whether Choi Lee had obtained approval from the Marine Department for its design and installation. The court said the systemic questions raised need to be examined in public so as to expose any further systemic deficiency in the Marine Department concerning approval and certification. It will also facilitate the coroner in making necessary recommendations and addressing maritime safety in general. The court then allowed the appeal and ordered a death inquest for 2 of the victims. The Transport and Logistics Bureau said it will fully cooperate with the death inquest. After the boat collision, then Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying appointed a commission of inquiry to follow up on the case. The panel submitted 13 suggestions 1 year after the tragedy. The captains of the 2 vessels and 2 government officials were sentenced to between 9 months and 8 years in jail. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
The Hong Kong Observatory is set to issue the standby signal number 1 tonight. This Super Typhoon Doksuri is now within 800 kilometers of Hong Kong, packing maximum sustained winds of 185 kilometers per hour. Under the influence of the system's outer subsiding air, Hong Kong's air pollution level this afternoon reached 10+, indicating a serious health risk. As Super Typhoon Doksuri rolls into the South China Sea, the downdraft in its periphery has brought a combination of sweltering heat and air pollution to Hong Kong. Sheng Shui recorded temperatures surpassing 38 degrees Celsius. The Environmental Protection Department said the light wind is unfavorable for dispersion of pollutants. Air quality monitoring stations at the Central and Western District, Southern District, Yuen Long and Tuen Mun saw the health risk level ratchet up to 10+, indicating a serious health risk. This man said it's so hot that the drizzle didn't help and it's even harder to breathe with a mask on. According to the present forecast track, Doksuri is set to move towards the coastal areas of eastern Guangdong and southern Fujian on Thursday and Friday as either a severe typhoon or super typhoon. The observatory predicts Doksuri might skirt Hong Kong at around 400 kilometers to the east of the city on Friday morning. Despite the distance, threats remain. Former Assistant Director of the Observatory Leung Wing-mo said, usually the strongest impact comes from the northeastern side of the eye of the storm. This time Hong Kong is on Doksuri's west to southwest side, so we won't be hit the hardest, Leung predicts. So the meteorologist reminds the public to remain cautious given the combined effect of gusts and thunderstorms under Doksuri. Meanwhile, Doksuri has lashed the coastline of the northern Philippines, killing at least one person. In an island in Cagayan province, nearly 16,000 people were evacuated from high-risk coastal villages. The storm blew tin roofs off rural houses, flooded low-lying villages, and knocked out power. Schools and workplaces were shut down as a precaution. At Taiwan's southernmost point, waves up to 2.5 meters high were recorded. Train services between Kaohsiung and Taitung were cancelled, while ferries to outlying islands were suspended. Meanwhile, the mainland's National Observatory issued a red alert this morning, the most severe warning in its 4-tier warning system. And across Guangdong, Fujian, and Zhejiang provinces, fishing boats have been asked to return to port, and preparations have been made to minimize damage from flash floods and landslides. Senior diplomat Qin Gang was last night officially removed from his role as the country's foreign minister after being missing from public view for more than a month. The foreign ministry today declined to provide a reason. A flurry of questions from both local and international news outlets in the Foreign Ministry's first press conference after Qin Gang's abrupt dismissal just 7 months into the job.
How has Qin Gang's absence affected China's diplomacy with the outside world, especially the US?
China's diplomacy has been making progress and moving forward, in a orderly manner. Next question, please.
Is he the subject of a corruption probe?
I don't have information available. Next question, please.
On the spate of questions about Qin's fate and whereabouts, Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning asked journalists to refer to the relevant announcement released on Xinhua News. When asked why all mentions of Qin have been scrubbed from the ministry's website, the spokesperson said that it was done according to protocols for regular updates. Star Lee, the National People's Congress Standing Committee's Hong Kong representative, revealed the decision was made in a unanimous vote at the National Legislature. She said Beijing had made thorough considerations over the reappointment, given the complicated geopolitical situation and competition between major powers. According to the central government website, Qin Gang's position is taken up by Wang Yi. The 70-year-old Wang stepped down as foreign minister in December. Qin still retains his role as a state councillor. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visited the Kingdom of Tonga today as he continued his tour of the Asia-Pacific. The trip comes amid U.S. concerns about China's growing influence in the region. Blinken has now headed to New Zealand. Danny Rao reports.
During his visit to Tonga, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken dedicated a new U.S. embassy and praised the return of Peace Corps volunteers following the end of the pandemic. He met with Tonga's Prime Minister Siosiso Sivaleni and other officials. They discussed their bilateral relationship as well as regional and global issues. Blinken talked about U.S. efforts to tackle the Pacific climate crisis and told reporters he had concerns about China's actions in the region, including what he called predatory economic activities.
Well, I think one of the things that we've seen is that as China's engagement in the region has grown, there has been some, from our perspective, increasingly problematic behavior, including at the same time the assertion of unlawful maritime claims, something that I've raised extensively when I was in China.
However, Tongan Prime Minister Sivaleni said his country had started to pay down its debt to China this year. Sivaleni said he had no concerns about Tonga's relationship with Beijing and that their bilateral relationship is focused on development in areas such as infrastructure. Blinken has now travelled to New Zealand. On Thursday, he will meet with officials from New Zealand and Australia and watch the Women's World Cup football match between the US and the Netherlands. Meanwhile, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese began his first official visit to New Zealand in Wellington today. Albanese held talks on topics including climate, defence and economic matters with his New Zealand counterpart Chris Hipkins. A joint statement issued after the meeting called for transparency over the Solomon Islands China policing deal. Beijing says it has increased cooperation with the Solomon Islands while fostering stability and economic growth in a Pacific nation. Albanese and Hipkins also committed to updating a defence cooperation agreement the two nations had first signed in 1991. Daniel, TV News.
An American fighting on the side of Ukraine has been wounded on the front lines and sent to a hospital in Germany. Former U.S. Marine Trevor Reed was once jailed in Russia but was freed last year in a prisoner swap. The United States, meanwhile, will provide another $400 million worth of military aid to Ukraine, its 43rd package since the war started. Nasi Karim has more.
This is Trevor Reed, a former U.S. Marine in Russian custody. This is Reed in April last year, being escorted to a plane, freed after painstaking negotiations by U.S. officials to enact a prisoner swap with Russia. Now, Reed is in a hospital in Germany, reportedly injured while fighting on the side of Ukraine in their war with Russia. His case potentially complicates matters for Washington, which is still trying to secure the release of 2 Americans detained by Moscow, Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich and corporate security executive Paul Whelan. According to Associated Press sources, Reed was wounded several weeks ago on the front lines in a war the United States is supporting with weapons, but not with troops. Something the U.S. State Department was quick to point out.
So I want to be explicitly clear about something. Mr. Reed was not engaged in any activities on behalf of the U.S. government. And as I indicated, we have been incredibly clear, warning American citizens, American nationals, not to travel to Ukraine, let alone participate in fighting there.
Washington has made it clear that it does not have the mechanisms in place to evacuate citizens from Ukraine. Thousands of volunteer soldiers from around the world are believed to be fighting alongside Ukraine's armed forces. Reed was arrested in Moscow in 2019, accused of assaulting police officers after a night of heavy drinking, and was sentenced to 9 years in prison. The Biden administration, meanwhile, says it is sending up to $400 million in additional military aid to Ukraine, including a variety of munitions for advanced air defense systems and a number of small surveillance Hornet drones. It comes as Russia steps up attacks on Ukrainian Black Sea port cities after Moscow pulled out of the grain export deal last week.
Announcements like today's reflect our commitment to continuing to provide Ukraine with the weapons and equipment they need to help them succeed on the battlefield.
Nazri Karim, TVB News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is set to visit China in October. The visit will coincide with a Belt and Road Forum taking place in China. China has become Russia's most significant ally since early last year, when the West's strained ties with Moscow were chilling further as Putin was preparing to send his military into Ukraine. Putin last visited China just before what Russia calls a special military operation. Together with President Xi Jinping, they announced a no-limits partnership that has extended to economic, trade, political, and military areas. The U.S. military said a Russian fighter jet hit an American drone with a flare and severely damaged its propeller over Syria. Washington said the crew of the struck MQ-9 drone was able to maintain flight and safely recover the aircraft to its home base. According to U.S. officials, Russian jets have recently increased the pace of dangerous encounters with U.S. military aircraft over Syria, where forces from both countries operate. U.S. military officials have said it is unclear what has led to the uptick in aggressive Russian moves. Still ahead, 2 pilots killed after their firefighting plane crashed in Greece. Police arrest 9 people in connection with a watch store robbery in Tuen Mun. And the first marathon event at the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge will take place later this year. Welcome back. 3 people have been killed and thousands evacuated as wildfires raged through southern Greece this week. Among those killed were 2 pilots whose water-dropping plane crashed while fighting the fires on the island of Evia. The country is experiencing its 3rd successive heat wave that has pushed temperatures above 40 degrees Celsius amid tender dry conditions and strong winds. Tracy Furness has more.
On the island of Corfu, residents evacuated mountain villages in the north, fearing the nearby wildfires. Here in Lafki, the mayor says the fire is already threatening homes. He entered the yard of 2 houses and managed to pull the people out. We have evacuated the village. All the old people have left, he said. On the island of Rhodes, a blaze continued to move inland, torching mountains and forest areas, including a nature reserve. Authorities say more than 20,000 people, mostly tourists, have been evacuated on the island. A 3rd successive heat wave has hit Greece, pushing temperatures above 40 degrees Celsius across parts of the country. The European Union sent 500 firefighters, 100 vehicles and 7 planes from 10 member states, while Turkey, Israel, Egypt and other countries have also sent help. EU officials blame climate change for the increasing frequency and intensity of wildfires across Europe, noting 2022 was the second worst year of wildfire damage on record after 2017. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Chief Executive John Lee thanked Indonesia for supporting Hong Kong to be part of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP. Lee was in Indonesia today to continue his second leg of the week-long ASEAN trip. He witnessed the signing of 15 memorandums of understanding between Hong Kong and Indonesia. The MOUs cover areas ranging from investment promotion, trade and fundraising to technology and aerospace. Meanwhile, Lee also paid a visit to Indonesia's first bullet train, the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed train developed under China's Belt and Road Initiative. Police have arrested 9 people on suspicion of involvement in a watch store robbery in Tuen Mun in May. The suspects are 6 men and 3 women aged between 24 and 56. One of them was taken to the Tai Po police station for further investigation. Authorities also collected fresh evidence including 8 watches, $130,000 worth of cash and several mobile phones. The incident occurred on the 14th of May when 3 men armed with hammers and knives charged inside a watch store on Kai Fat Path in Tuen Mun. The robbers stole 88 watches worth an estimated $7 million before escaping in a private car. The police arrested the 9 suspects yesterday in several locations in Kowloon and the New Territories and believe they have busted a robbery ring. The 3rd Hong Kong Brands and Products Shopping Festival will kick off on August 4th at Asia World Expo. Organized by the Chinese Manufacturers Association, the event will showcase large numbers of locally made goods and delicacies. The association hopes to attract visitors from the city and abroad. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Freshly made corn juice, a $1 pack of noodles, and a variety of herbal tea. These goods, coming straight out of Hong Kong, will be available to residents at the 3rd Hong Kong Brands and Products Shopping Festival next week at Asia World Expo. Organized by the Chinese Manufacturers Association of Hong Kong, or CMA, the festival will host more than 300 booths spread across 6 zones, including the Leisure Food Zone, Living and Household Products Zone, and Fashion and Trendy Life Zone. Several products will offer price cuts of up to 90%. The shopping festival will also feature an all-new flavorful fun zone, where visitors can taste various local and international delicacies from its 20 food booths. Entrance is $10, while children, elderly, and the disabled can enter free of charge.
Last year, the number of visitors to the show was 60,000 visitors, and the amount of business realized at the show was about 16 million Hong Kong dollars. We expect that with the easing of the pandemic, there will be increased in the number of visitors and also in the business as well. This year we have the tasting for the food. Because during the pandemic it was impossible. So this year we expect that with the tasting of the food, it will encourage the people to shop more.
Organizers hope that up to 80,000 visitors will visit this year and expect between 500 and 2,000 of them to come from the Greater Bay Area. To facilitate visitors from the Greater Bay Area to the shopping festival, the Chinese Manufacturers Association organized complimentary shuttle buses traveling between Asia World Expo and locations such as Tuen Mun and the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge Hong Kong Port. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
And the first marathon race at the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge will be held on November 19th. The event is limited to 8,000 participants, with registrations beginning on the 14th of next month. It will be a 21-kilometer half marathon split into 3 groups, a competitive group and 2 public ones. Participants will start the race at the bridge's Hong Kong port, then go to the end of the local section of the bridge before returning to Hong Kong port. They will be able to enjoy the views of Asia World Expo and the airport along the way. Event organizers will invite top athletes from around the world to join the event. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.